Chapter 3 deals with management and motivation. Can't emphasize the importance of motivation too much, because understanding what motivates ourselves and understanding what motivates others is an essential part of being an effective manager and an effective leader. So Chapter 3 talks about the definition of motivation, and keep in mind that there's not one definition, and they're all fairly similar, but at the end of the day, it's what drives each of us to get up in the morning and to work towards the things that are important to us. So why motivation matters, I think, is at the heart of what we want to talk about and think about throughout our studies. It matters because it's really what is the trigger, what's important to us, what gets us excited, enthusiastic, committed to a project, to an organization, to each other. And so that's discussed briefly in Chapter 3. And then Chapter 3 also talks about a history of some of the studies that have been done around motivation. And one of the big things when we talk about motivation is this idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards. So intrinsic are the self rewards, the things that are important to us internally, where we feel like we've done a good job, we get personal satisfaction, versus extrinsic rewards are the things that are given to us outside of ourselves, pay raises, promotions, and the like. So what's more important is something that we have to look at and examine. And then, so this gets down to who motivates employees. Is it the manager, or do employees motivate themselves? And there's no simple answer here, because there are times when certainly a manager does motivate or demotivate his or her employees. But at the end of the day, what we really want is a lot of self-motivated employees, because they're the ones who are going to be able to have a more sustainable form of drive and energy to bring to the workplace. So is everyone motivated? And so, again, not a simple question. So everyone has the ability to be motivated, but is everyone motivated all the time? And the answer to that is clearly no, right? There are times when the manager or the organization creates an environment that is demotivating. And so we have to recognize what might cause that. And then the other thing that's mentioned in Chapter 3, which I think is a good topic, is this idea that different things motivate different generations. So we have to, as we go into the workplace and given the privilege of being a manager or a leader in an organization, we may find ourselves with different generations doing similar work. And so we have to recognize that different people are at different points in their lives, and we have to recognize that there are different rewards and different motivations for individuals. So it goes beyond just understanding generations. It goes also understanding individuals. But I think one way to categorize things and to try to frame things is around generations. So as I mentioned, Chapter 3 does a good job giving a definition. We can read through these definitions. The other thing is that, when we think about an engaged or motivated employee, we can think about them being more productive, more focused, more loyal, and having the other positive behaviors that kind of make the organization a place that people enjoy being, where customers enjoy coming in, where patients are better served, and etc. And it just so happens that when employees are more motivated, more engaged, that the financial results tend to follow them. So trying to figure out what motivates ourselves and others, there have been many studies, and the real focus of shifting to psychology and the field of management to thinking about positive ideas really came about with Maslow in the 50s and 60s. And he started to think about the basic needs of human beings. We broke it up into 5 categories, and I think a lot of the studies that have gone on since then have really leveraged his work. And as I mentioned, this extrinsic versus intrinsic factors are things that we need to think about as managers. So I've mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is something that has become very important in the literature and ensuing research. So you want to get a good understanding of Maslow because a lot of the research that has followed his work is leveraged in the work that he's done. So there are lots of motivational theories that are discussed in Chapter 3, and I think, again, you'll find that many of them leverage Maslow, Aldalfer, Herzberg in particular. McClellan came along and really focused on this acquired needs theory and broke it up into three main categories: achievement, affiliation, and power, and try to figure out what was important to each individual in terms of higher level needs. And what he found is that people tend to migrate towards one of the three needs, but in some cases we find that people will have high needs in all three areas. So it really is individually dependent in terms of motivation. We don't want to, while we learn a lot from the research and the theories, and it'll help us to kind of frame what might motivate people, we really have to get to know individuals in our organization and understand where they are in their life and what's important to them as well. So Chapter 3 goes on to talk about some extrinsic factors, Skinner's reinforcement theory, punishment and extinction, the Pavlov dog type of thinking. And then we have the intrinsic, equity. I want to make sure I'm being treated equally. The expectancy theory basically saying that if I do a certain act, then I expect that a certain reward will be given for that act. It might be a pat in the back, it may be a pay raise, it could be a series of things, but there's an expectancy that gets built up in the workplace. And then the goal setting theory deals a lot with this idea of having very specific goals and giving feedback on a timely basis. So McGregor's theory X and theory Y was really based on the leader's perception of the followers in the organization as opposed to the motivation that individual employees have. And then Taylor's scientific management really was this idea that we should try to study the acts of individuals and try to move towards a more automated process and to try to eliminate non-value-added activities. So there are many management theories around motivation. Some of them focus on the individual, some of them focused on management style. So theory C really originates out of Japan, which is this idea that moving towards a more flexible approach to management. So McGregor was saying that we could take a theory X, which is one where we essentially keep a close eye on people, very directive, and tell them what to do all the time. And then theory Y was more of a laissez-faire style of management where we trusted employees, felt they were self-motivated. Theory Z talks about we need to adapt our style to the situation, to the employees. And I think that's where we are when it comes to leadership and management, is that we really need to be adaptive. We need to understand the situation that we're in. We need to understand the skills and capabilities of our employees, and we need to adapt our management leadership styles to ensure that, that we accommodate the specific situation. So here's a list of extrinsic rewards. You can see they're all tangible rewards. And you can compare that to the intrinsic rewards, which are more intangible. Healthy relationships, meaningful work, competence, etc. And you could also map this extrinsic versus intrinsic to Maslow, right? Because the lower level needs are more extrinsic, and then as our extrinsic rewards are satisfied, we start to focus on these higher level intrinsic rewards. So here's some myths about motivation and satisfaction. All motivation is intrinsic. Right? So we all have a combination. It's just a question of where we are in the spectrum. Sometimes we're more focused on intrinsic, and sometimes we're more focused on extrinsic. If I'm coming out of school, I have a lot of student loans to pay, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to, budget things. Then, pay is going to be a big factor for me. But if I'm in my mid-career and I'm making decent money, then I might be more interested in career development and other things that are more intrinsic natured. So this idea that some people are not motivated, I think, has been debunked by and large. There are situations that we put people in where it's not a good fit, so we have to recognize that part of being a good manager is to understand people, where they fit, and what might drive them. So people are motivated by money. I think people are motivated by money, but not exclusively by money, I think is true. And then there's motivation manipulation. And, some may view it that way, but I think if we think about trying to understand others, trying to understand ourselves, and creating an environment and a culture that allows people to come to work enthusiastic and supportive and helpful, then I think we're moving in the right direction. So there is no one size that fits all, and so forth. Okay, so I think the main message here is that we have to be flexible, we have to be adaptive, and we also have to be open-minded about what's going to motivate others. But I do think that despite the fact that there's no checklist, there is a framework here for us to think about. So here's some strategies that you might consider. Expect the best from people. Right? So this is this whole idea that if I expect good things from people, then I'm more likely to get them. This idea of fun, tailor rewards, find ways to obtain information and reward excellence, and encourage people to take responsibility and allow them to participate, allow them to make decisions, and so forth. And then Chapter 3 does a good job of discussing what might motivate different generations. This is a general theory because each individual is going to be a little different, but give you some insight in terms of different generations. And so as you get into the management realm, what you'll find is that most of the people that you'll be managing when you get into a management position are probably going to be millennials. Probably be some Generation X as well, and fewer baby boomers, kind of fading out of the workplace as you get into the management role. But each of them are going to have different, generally we expect they're going to have different needs along the intrinsic and extrinsic spectrum of things. So we'll end with a quote by Henry Ford, right? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so that's essentially what it comes down to with motivation, right? A lot of it has to do with this internal drive. And people can do remarkable things if they feel like they can and they're given the right support and the right tools in the workplace. And that's a big part of what management's about.